In our study of the first generation Titans, we have combined several of the male Titans into a singular video. Today, we are going to be doing the same thing with the female first generation Titans, otherwise known as the Titanesses. These four Titanesses, Theia, Themis, Mnemosyne, and Phoebe, serve a similar function to that of the male Titans. They typically serve an important function as the mothers of several much more important deities, and yet, unlike their male counterparts, we actually have at least some information on all four Titanesses' domains, along with at least one or two individual deeds. So then what did these four Titanesses represent? What did they do? Who were their children? And why were they not imprisoned alongside the male Titans? Let's talk about it. Before we get any further into today's episode, I just want to quickly ask that you subscribe and like if you enjoy my content. It really helps the channel out and it motivates me to make more content. Now back to regularly scheduled programming. Really quickly, I should note here that we are missing two Titanesses in this video. Rhea will get her own video, while Tethys was covered in the video on her husband, Oceanus. I just wanted to quickly mention that to avoid any confusion. Now back to the video. First up, we have Theia. Theia, or wide shining in English, was the goddess of sight and vision. Because of her domain, the Greeks also believed that it was she who endowed gold, silver, and other such gems with their beauty and intrinsic value. She was married to Hyperion, and together the two gave birth to Helios, Selene, and Eos. Through her children, Theia is the mother of essentially everything that gives off light, at least according to the Greeks. The sun lit up the world during the day, while the moon provided light during the night. Because of this, Theia was often thought of as the source of all light, or at least the source of the light in the world today. After this, Theia really isn't mentioned all that much in the myth. Instead, she serves much the same purpose as most of the male Titans. She's almost purely a genealogical figure, whose main purpose is to serve as the mother of much more important deities. However, we do know that Theia was not imprisoned following the overthrow of Kronos. This seems to be true for all the Titanesses. Why is that? Well, let's make some guesses. The main reason is the simple fact that no female Titan, save for Calypso, fought on the side of Kronos. In fact, the one Titan that we know for sure fought with Zeus was the Titaness Themis, who we will talk about in a bit. So this neutrality likely protected the Titanesses fairly well. This was likely the same sort of deal as Zeus gave Oceanus, just stay out of the way and I'll allow you to continue doing whatever it is you're doing. There was also the fact that Greece was dominated by men, and it likely would have been culturally a little strange to imprison female deities. This doesn't mean that women or female deities couldn't face punishment, far from it, but the Greek writers at the time likely would have been a bit leery of giving the same punishment that the men received to the women. Now that we've discussed that, let's move on to Themis. Themis is the personification of justice, divine order, law, and custom. Her domains are probably the most important listed domains for any of the Titans, save for maybe Kronos and Time. Themis is actually the inspiration for the modern day Lady Justice, which you've probably seen if you've looked at any courthouse ever. She was the first goddess to be depicted with the scales of justice. She also seemed to have served as the organizer or originator of communal assemblies. She was the source of what a society considered right and wrong, fair and unfair, and even what was to be done and not done. Themis was actually never married to another Titan. Instead, she was the second wife of Zeus. Together, the two had several children, including the Horae, the personifications of the seasons, Eunomia, goddess of law and legislation, Dike, justice, Irene, peace, and the Morae, the fates. A pretty impressive list of children. We aren't quite sure why Zeus and Themis split up, but we know that they eventually do. Themis is heavily associated with oracles, and was said to even be an oracle herself. It was Themis who first built the famous oracle at Delphi. It was also Themis who helped Apollo take over the oracle at Delphi following his birth and ascension as god of prophecy. Themis herself has several prophetic utterances or warnings in Greek mythology. For example, she warned Zeus that one of his sons would eventually steal a golden apple from the garden of the Hesperides. She also warns both Zeus and Poseidon not to marry Thetis, an ocean nymph, as the son of such a marriage would be far more powerful than either Zeus or Poseidon. Themis is also heavily associated with Nemesis. Nemesis is the goddess of retribution, and it was said that when Themis was disregarded by either men or gods, Nemesis would bring about retribution or revenge for the slight. Themis is also one of the few Titans who we know had shrines throughout Greece. She even had one near the Acropolis in Athens itself. Overall, besides Kronos himself, Themis is probably the most important and long-lasting Titan in Greek mythology. Next we have Mnemosyne. Mnemosyne was the goddess of memory. She was also said to be the source for the powers of authoritative speech in poets and kings. She, just like Themis, had no Titan husband. In fact, she is never recorded as having any husband at all. Instead, she is seduced by Zeus in the guise of a shepherd, and together they have the 9 muses. While I won't go through each one by one, the list is up in front of you, and I'm sure they'll receive their own video at some point, just know that these muses were actually quite important to the Greeks, as it was they who provided the inspiration and ability for the Greeks to create any form of art. Mnemosyne is a bit of an oddball among the Titans. She's actually mentioned quite often in Greek literature, especially when compared to other Titans. This is likely because of 2 things. Firstly, memory was and still is such a basic component of oral and written history that it was impossible for the Greeks to simply ignore the deity that is supposed to personify such an important aspect of their writings. Secondly, as the mother of the muses, nearly every single type of Greek literature imaginable can be traced back to Mnemosyne in some way. Because of this, much of ancient Greek literature, including the Iliad, the Odyssey, and Theogony, all start with an invocation, or at least a few lines of praise for the muses and Mnemosyne. Because of this, Mnemosyne is likely the most mentioned Titan in Greek literature, probably even surpassing Kronos himself. Mnemosyne was typically worshipped alongside her children, and that's really all. We don't have many personal accomplishments or anything of the sort. Mnemosyne is important as the source, either through herself or her children, of essentially all of the ancient Greek literature, and because of that, she was revered by those sources that survive. Lastly, we have the least mentioned Titaness, Phoebe. Phoebe is given no particular domain of her own, but we do know that her name meant shining or bright. Phoebe really serves as yet another genealogical figure. Phoebe was married to Coes, and with him she had 2 children, Leto and Asteria. She is the grandmother of Apollo and Artemis, 2 of the most important Olympians. Her name, Phoebe, and its male counterpart, Phobos, would go on to serve as a sort of nickname or middle name for both Apollo and Artemis. And that's really about it. Phoebe is pretty much only there to serve as the mother of Leto and the grandmother of Apollo and Artemis. The Titanesses are a fascinating grouping of Greek deities. They embody a mixture of the importance of the Olympians and the importance of the Titans. Some, such as Mnemosyne and Themis, are important for their own domains and deeds, and thus resemble the importance of an Olympian, while others, Phoebe and Theia, served much like their male counterparts, purely as genealogical figures. In any case, the Titanesses are actually much more involved in Greek myth than their male counterparts, and each left behind an important and lasting legacy that deserves to be discussed and remembered. Thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed it, and I hope you learned something. If you have any comments or questions on the video, or believe I've made a mistake, please comment down below. And please like and subscribe if you enjoyed it. It really helps the channel out. Peace.